So normally when I build a guitar, I'll use my spline for a neck. But since I'm doing this for Brandon, we're gonna make a neck with a Spanish foot for the Taurus build. Now we're doing a lot of pre-work here in order to make the build go a lot smoothly for his main channel, but for me, I know you wanna see the nitty gritty. So here's how we make a neck for an Antonio Taurus style guitar. First, in order to establish the head angle, you have to grab your Taurus, which I have mine right here. So what I've done is I've kind of preset this because it's very fiddly, but I lined up, this is a angle finder. I lined up the angle of the head to the underside of the fingerboard because there's a taper to the fingerboard and there's a taper on this headstock. So I have very carefully, by using my built-in ocular bits, established that this is the neck angle. We have to find this inside of this. So first things first, you got to clean it up. So in order to get this down to a more manageable thickness, and this is really thick, it's over an inch thick. We're going to use this planer, ancient planer. This thing it's a tank. It's noisy, and I'm just going to take a few light passes just to get it smoothed up. I don't care what the thickness is because it doesn't matter yet. As always, ears on. Now that this is kind of roughly cleaned up, I'm not too worried about this knot because this is going to go away and it's not going to be there. But I'm going to take my head template that I've actually taken off of the 1888 Targa Taurus and give it a little bit of space on the top up here. And I'm not worried about centering or tracing anything like this yet. This is solely to establish where my head is going to go in terms of the placement. So I'm not too terribly worried about critical measurements. This looks like a pretty good spot to be where I'll be able to get my entire neck and my heel stack and my foot out of this whole thing. So I'm just making sure that this is nice and tight here. And one simple pencil line. So this is going to be my head angle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this over to the bandsaw. I'm going to very, very carefully cut right along that line. And since this is Spanish cedar, it's going to cut very nicely. Once I have this cut, I'm going to flip it over and glue it, but we'll get there next. So let's head over to the bandsaw. We're going to come in and take a very nerve-wracking pass across here. Watch your finger, because this guy didn't. So now that we have these two angles roughly established, they're going to get glued together like this. But there's no way I'm going to glue to this surface or to this surface. So I have to use a hand plane to plane this down. I'm going to use my trusty tried and true number 5. We can take a bit of a cut here. Now, what I'm looking for is that this line right here is a very nice straight line, and that it's relatively square to this side. And because I've got a little bit of extra room, it kind of doesn't matter, but it does in the long run. And yes, I know I could set up a machine to do this, but in reality, this is just so darn fast with a hand plane. All right, and there we go. That is feeling pretty good. There might be a few plane lines. I'm going to check for squareness, and I'm going to check for concavity. Crosswise here, and I'm looking to see if there's a gap. And then I'm going to check crosswise here, checking to see if there's a gap. my first time checking it, came out just right. So at this point, I can take a scraper and do a couple quick scrapes. And at this point, I'm almost ready to clamp it. I'm just going to very carefully, to ensure that I don't have anything like this. You can see right here, this is a little indistinct and fuzzy, which is actually a good thing. And this side is shiny from the hand plane, so this means that this is a little bit low. One last check. That's good. That's good. And that's good. So this surface is now perfectly flat, such as it is, and ready for glue. Now, I'm going to do the same to this surface as well. All right, so at this point in time, I've flattened out the backside of this and taken a moment to clamp this into place so it's not going to squidgy about. And yes, that's a technical term. And then I put an extra clamp here, which seems strange, but if you take your head and you bump it against it, when you place your cauls onto it and clamp it, you don't run the risk of having this squish out. So in order to keep everything from moving, I like to put a clamp here to lock the head into place. It's a little bit of a simple insurance. So for the cauls, these are just melamine coated plywood, which is also the same material that my bench is. So we had plenty of this in overabundance. So now all we're gonna have to do is put some glue onto here. Again, I'm not too worried about this because this is all gonna get trimmed away and I don't wanna touch the surface too much. And we're gonna get it glued up here and hopefully this will be a good, successful neck joint. I'm just using a little bit of the hot hide glue. This stuff is a little bit thicker than I normally make it because I like that bit of extra grab. Now, some people will say that you should size this beforehand, wipe it off. Well, that does increase the overall strength and bond because it increases the amount that it soaks in. I don't find that it's necessarily a needed precaution. So with that said, I'm just going to come in here, working quickly. Don't have to be too clean. Oh, just as a side note, if you don't have melamine benches in your own shop, I would put a piece of newspaper underneath this. So that way you don't make a big mess of things, because inevitably there is a significant amount of squeeze out. There we go, and just like that, we've made a neck blank. And this is really the heart of every guitar, but as you can see, I'm putting a fair amount of pressure on this because I want to make sure that this is held into place. You can see the amount of squeeze out here, and there is a significant amount of squeeze out back here, which I would highly recommend, like I said, put some paper down or something, but I'm not going to worry about it because these benches are melamine. Nothing sticks to it other than coffee, apparently. So we're going to let this dry, and then we'll get to making the rest of the neck. Yesterday we left this clamped up. Quite obviously I've taken off the clamps. Now we need to cut this headstock portion down to whatever the thickness your head may be. Because this is going to be a torus, and you kind of need to work off of whatever tuning machines. I want the headstock to be a total thickness of 18 millimeters, right around there. I'm planning on having a 2 millimeter, slightly under, head veneer. So that means that I've taken my my marking guide here and I've set this to 16 or maybe a tick over. Again, not super hypercritical, just don't go under the number. And I'm going to go and reference off of the back of the headstock here, and I'm just going to give it a line. And then now that I've got this line, I can use a pencil to extend this out. And now I know that this is my line that I need to cut to. And I've got my bandsaw already set up at 90 degrees, so the table is perpendicular to the blade. I just put a brand new blade on this, tensioned it, tuned it up. I'm going to very carefully cut this off. If I leave it a little bit proud, then all I have to do is use my hand plane to clean it up, which I'm going to do anyways. As you can see, I'm well outside of the line all the way around, and it really makes me realize that I should change my blade more often. Now, there's many ways of taking this down. Use your preferred method, be it one of the Wagner safety planers, which terrify me, or if you have CNC, this might be a good place to use that. I don't, so I don't. You could use a belt sander to take this down. That takes a while, it's risky, but however you're going to take this down, I'm going to use a hand plane, and all you have to do is measure the four corners to make sure that this is exactly where you want it to be. And for me, I'm aiming for maybe 16.2, roughly, so that way I have a finished of about 18 or so. So I'll go do that. So this gives me an opportunity to break out my favorite hand plane of all time, which is my number 4 in cast manganese bronze. It just has this weight to it that is incredible. Once you've removed your asthma curls, I like to use a bench scraper, and again, just clean up the surface. And I'm not going to worry about this because I have to cut this whole thing down to thickness to establish where I want my nut to be, and then my neck thickness, which is why I've left this all kind of thick. Once I establish where my nut is, I'm going to cut off the end of my neck somewhere, and then I'm going to cut the remainder of my neck blocks out of the same piece. So this way, out of this whole piece, I can get an entire single neck and neck block all in one. And now that is perfectly smooth, ready for glue. Sometimes you actually don't want this to be too smooth or else the glue doesn't have enough to grab onto. So by roughing up with the scraper, it gives you a little bit of a better bite on the piece. So in order to figure out the amount of material to take off of the top of this to establish the location of the headstock, you have to do this based off of your guitars, your neck angle, or desired neck angle, along with your fingerboard thickness. So I'm aiming for a 7mm thick fingerboard at the 1st fret and about 6 at the 12th fret as it tapers down. What I have here, and I always have to consult the oracle when building these, is I'm going to measure this right here, which, if you can see, at the 1st fret is right around 20-ish, given for some discrepancies. And this is a very parallel fingerboard and neck. I'm going to hand this off, and with that in mind, I'm going to use modern measurements, since I'm pretty sure that Brandon wants a modern playing guitar. So the reason we're doing all this crazy math is because we want this glue joint line to end up just at the right spot so that it's very beautiful. What do we say? 21.5 minus 7 is 14. Let's give ourselves 2mm of leeway. So that's going to be 16 millimeters. And now I'm just looking off of the reference of the back of the head. There's that. So now we know that this is our starting point. Right here is going to be the edge of where our nut is. So from there, and this is going to get complicated quickly, we need 5.5 millimeters because I want a wider nut and a little bit of leeway. So 5.5 millimeters plus 325 millimeters to get to the 12th fret. So by my simple calculations, that's 330 millimeters and a half, which is roughly here. At which point I'm going to arbitrarily say I want this, let's see, this was, we call that 16. And then, so I'm going to call this 19 to give me the proper taper. So I'm just going to come in here. And yes, I know I could be using a fancy jig. None of these measurements are super hypercritical other than where the 12th fret kind of comes out. So there's my 19 and a half. And from there, I'm going to come back to my large ruler. And I'll even turn it around so you can see what I'm doing. So I can't up here, which will give me my taper of my neck, and I'm going to leave a little bit of extra, and I'll probably end up cutting it about here. After much mathing, I was able to establish not only the plane of the fingerboard, the bottom of the fingerboard, but so my 12th fret is going to be here. This will give us the inner block. I'm going to cut this off here and then leave this whole remainder portion as one thickness, so that way I can hand plane it down a little bit. And after realizing that I want a body depth of 86 and not realizing it, just doing some calculations, I'm going to need basically 3 of these stacks plus this to make it up. Now, depending on your thickness of wood, your mileage is going to vary. So if you start off with a thicker piece and you have thicker pieces, do the math accordingly, and you might want to shrink your layers accordingly so that way you don't have one little stubby layer left. I'm going to cut this down. I will use probably the table saw or a hand saw or the radial arm. I'm going to use the radial arm saw. Why not? To the radial arm saw. We're at the Finger Remover 3000. We're going to just give this a little quick cut. Takes about a second. By the way, I know I'm supposed to have a negative rake on here, but last time we changed the blade was in 1980, and they like to live dangerously. And to whoever suggested I build a brake for this, I might take you up on it. Still going. We're back over here at the bandsaw. I think I'm gonna cut it in this direction because I've got a little bit of a better sight line on the pencil line. By the way, I do have a jig to do this on the table saw, but it just takes so darn long to set it up. This is actually faster. So this is why, despite what it looks like, I actually don't use a lot of jigs. It takes longer to set them up and remember how to do it than to do one of these. So here's. And again, as a reminder, it's off, but this is the most dangerous time using the saw as it winds down. All right, so now we have this roughly close to the line. I'm going to use a hand plane to clean this up. Once I have this cleaned up, I'll know exactly where to put the headstock. So now I've got this set up on my bench dogs, and unfortunately I didn't get to use my favorite one, but I used my most grabbed. You want to grab the longest plane that you can, shy of your joining plane. And from here, it's just, well, more of this. Measuring out 19 here at my 12th fret. And then at my 1st fret, I'm measuring out 17, so all the way across. And I took off the tension from this just to make sure there isn't any induced flex. And my ruler tells me that I am relatively straight this way, and because it's even, checked it this way, and it's perfectly flat across. So this maybe took 10-15 minutes. Again, not too bad. Would have taken me way longer to figure out how to use my jigs. So at this point in time, I'm just gonna glue the head veneer on. So I know I could measure, but quick line tells me exactly where I need to cut it. We're getting to the point now where it's starting to feel like a line at Disney, where you think you're there, but you're really not. But we're getting really close. So at this point, and I highly suggest that everybody gets a melamine bench top, because they're cheap. But I can glue straight onto here and use this as a gigantic hull without having to make anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spread the glue onto the surface. This came out to 18 millimeters. Well, after this, it's all 18 millimeters. I've got my taper down. And so I'm just going to glue it down here. And I'm going to use a big old chunk of this melamine and a couple clamps and get it all glued down really quickly. And it's going to be pretty easy. So with that said, 1, 2, spread your glue. Again, not going to worry about being too clean here because of this melamine tabletop. And there's a lot of excess wood here. So it's all just going to get cut away for whatever we don't need. Make sure you don't clamp too short to the edge. Gonna just splunker down like that. And just a few quick clamps, and this portion is done. Now we're gonna wait about a day to dry. We'll trim up the end here. We'll lay out our head and build our heel block. And then we're getting really close, but this is a traditional method, very time consuming, but it just works. Marshall from the future here. We'll get to Marshall in the past soon. So I got ahead of myself by working and kind of forgot to turn on the camera. Basically, what I had to do was stack up the wood for the heel, and I needed a fair amount. So the wood stack was actually about this big, and what I did is I measured and figured out exactly how thick I want this to be. So that's the surface from the neck face to the back of the heel on the inside of the back. So what you're gonna have to do is calculate out the distance here minus the thickness of the neck, and then put as many stacks as you need going up. This one ended up being 4, and it's been about maybe it was about 6 inches long or so. And then this top one, I actually just shifted it over in this direction and then cut it out. And you can see a lot of that over on Brandon's channel. So sorry for getting ahead of things, but let's go to Marshall in the past. This is a jig that we've made for cutting the slots for the Spanish foot, and then we're holding the neck at an angle. We're gonna just take a cut. We have our neck slots cut with an angle for the back planed into it as the end line. So we're basically going to cut straight down with a bandsaw from here back to about here, and then kind of come out this way. And then we have to round it. Now all we have to do is straighten up this side and this side, because I just kind of rough cut those onto the bandsaw. The only spot of this that I really care about is the middle, because we're going to be rounding this over. And this is going to get rounded over too. And so I'm just kind of
try to take off that corner.
Yeah, because what we want to do is come to within about 1/8 of an inch of here, working up gently to the center line. I filled out this. It's rough, it's close, it's not done, but it's close. It gets the general idea through.
Yeah.
I have also extended my line through the center line of the neck from the tip of the head all the way through here, just using a long ruler. Struck a line there so I know where these two corners are. And then I've drawn out the heel onto the back, which is in inches, not in metric. Now we're going to cut this section out.
lot of wood taken off.
Oh yeah. I'll just even this all out. At this point in time, we've kind of got this roughed out. I'm going to make a centerline scribe right here. We have to find the shape inside of here to get rid of all this extra wood, because there's a ton of it. We're going to use one of my favorite tools in the whole world, which is this ancient draw knife.
It looks ancient.
Basically, what you do is you take this, and we'll just kind of start in here, and you can...
Oh, that's very satisfying.
Oh my goodness, yes. So one of the things that we're going to have to be careful with is going too far. If it does that, we can come around from this side. I've kind of been working on the heel just to get this roughly into place. And I've also been working on this a little bit. Again, this is really rough. I'm going to be finishing it out. But at this point in time, because we have to make an allowance for the top, because we're not going to just glue the neck on this way, which, I mean, I suppose you could, but you'd be wrong. What we're going to do is just scribe a line, because at this point in time, I don't like to use pencils. A pencil has a fatness to the line, and you don't know exactly where the edge is. So I'm going to take something that has a much thinner fine fat point, and I'm just going to take this, put it up here, make sure that this area of your bench is clean. So plop it down, and I do like to get it centered up, because if there is a variance, you will be able to do that to compensate. So I just hold this up here roughly, give it a trace on all sides, all the way around. And this one's always a little bit more difficult, but... And at that point in time, now that I've got this line traced around the edge, I'm going to take my knife and do a very careful bevel all the way to that line, and then I'm going to use a chisel to remove this, and I'll test fit that onto the top. At that point in time, I don't feel like you have to see this. This is just going to be done with a knife and a chisel, and it's going to take way too long. But at that point in time, you've got your Spanish foot attached to your guitar body, and then you're going to take your sides and slip them into these slots. And whatever thickness of slot and side it is, you can either reduce the thickness of your sides down to be a relatively easy fit, but snug, but have them slip in easily. Or if you do the modern method, which no traditional Spanish maker has ever done, I'll repeat that, no traditional Spanish maker has ever done, is cut a very wide slot and then backfill with something else. So no maker has ever done that, except for one who wrote about it in a book. So at that point in time, you'll be able to control your neck angle with your plantilla, and that will be another video. Thanks for watching. Please consider liking, subscribing. As a reminder, this is for Brandon Acker's guitar, so go ahead and check that video out as well. Feel free to subscribe on Patreon. It really helps things out, helps keep this afloat, and keeps bringing you videos. See you next time.